It's an honor to be here at Grantmakers in the Arts with all of you. The last time I was at a Grantmakers in the Arts meeting, when I was on the board of Native Arts and Cultures Foundation, I believe it was in Brooklyn. Yeah, Brooklyn, New York. I had a great time visiting and going into workshops and so on to see what everyone is doing. And the last talk I heard was Wynton Marsalis reprising his Kennedy Center performance on the story of American music. It's brilliant, and but I wanted to ask him, and he was quickly whisked out of there, no questions, and I wanted to say, but what about indigenous people? What about us in the story? Because we're part of the story, and I can prove it. But that's not quite what this short talk performance is about. But maybe it is. Because it's about the artist and what an artist does and how we are in a call and response with our communities, with ancestors, with the spirit or spirits of our art or arts. My first awareness of myself as an artist, or even the calling to be an artist, occurred through music, through jazz. As a young Native child, about 3 or 4 years old in Tulsa, in the Muskogee Creek Nation. Once I was so small, I could barely peer over the top of the back seat of the black Cadillac my father polished and tuned daily. The car he bought with his Indian oil money. I wanted to see everything. This was around the time I acquired language. When something happened that changed my relationship to the spin of the world, it changed even the way I looked at the sun. This suspended integer of time probably escaped ordinary notice in my parents' universe, which informed most of my vision in the ordinary world. They were still omnipresent gods. We were driving somewhere in Tulsa, the northern border of the Creek Nation. I don't know where we were going, where we had been, but I knew the sun was melting and boiling the asphalt. The car windows were open for any breeze as I stood on tiptoes on the floorboard behind my father, a handsome god who smelled of Old Spice, whose slick black hair was always impeccably groomed, his clothes perfectly creased and ironed. The radio was on. Even then, I loved the radio jukeboxes or any magic thing containing music. I wonder what signaled that moment, a loop of time, that on first glance could be any place in time. I became acutely aware of the line the jazz trumpeter was playing, a sound I later associated with Miles Davis. I didn't know the words jazz or trumpet. I don't know how to say it with what sounds or words, but in that confluence of hot southern afternoon, in the breeze of aftershave and humidity, I followed that sound to the beginning of the birth of sound. I was suspended in whirling stars. I grieved my parents' failings, my own life, which I saw stretch the length of that rhapsody. My rite of passage into the world of humanity occurred then through jazz. The music was a startling bridge between familiar and strange lands. I heard stomp dance shells singing. I saw suits, fine hats, satin. I heard workers singing in the fields. It was a way to speak beyond the ordinary confines of language. I still hear it. I was attempting to speak sense of the world I had entered, learning words, patterns of thought, and speech when I first heard this sound that intrigued me, that would follow in my art, in poetry, in song, and in music. Even as children, art gives the awareness of the universal sound. In fact, we're all made of sound. We're all made of vibration. Everything in this room is held together by a song, essentially. Communities are given coherence by art. As the child artist, I began to follow that sound, delight in it, and it's this way for every artist. Through the stories, timelines, though stories, timelines, and cultures differ. And perhaps in all children, for children make art, they inherently and naturally embody the creative impulse. And that child is still within all of us. Every art form has its ancestors, just like every organization has its ancestors. Patrice is part of the ancestors of the NEA, and actually I will be too. I am too, and everyone else who's been a part of the NEA or Grantmakers in the arts. Every art form has its ancestors. I tell students, who are your poetry ancestors? They like to be remembered and acknowledged. In the song we're going to play, Winding Through the Milky Way, I'm honoring John Coltrane and his ancestors and theirs. And if you study John Coltrane, you find Dennis Sandoli, a guitarist and composer. So he's part of Coltrane's ancestors, who opened Coltrane to advanced harmonic theory and scales from world music. And Coleman Hawkins and Ben Webster is part of John Coltrane's ancestry, who Coltrane admitted he didn't understand them, but he felt them emotionally. That made me happy, because that's how I feel that's how I feel out music, is emotionally. Charlie Parker blew him open. Charlie Parker's mother, Addie Parker, was Native. You have to understand the Psalms, Louis Armstrong, gospel, spirituals, and eventually you'll wind up at a Muskogee Creek ceremonial grounds. My poetry begins there too, in the music. The roots of all poetry will be found in music. And probably the roots of all human beings, will be found in music, because we all start with a song. The spirit, and it began with, I have to acknowledge, Emily Dickinson, Jean Toomer, Leslie Silko, so many other poets, artists. The spirit of our art is born of human, plant, animal, stone, and of element ancestors. The spirit of our art calls us, and we have to answer back, a kind of call and response from the moment our spirit enters our body as breath, and then every one of us takes it all in. I have lived 19,404 midnights, some of them in the quaver of breaking earth dreams, and some without any memory at all, just the flash of the jump from a night rainbow to nothing but the blues in buckskin and silk. Get back, I said, and what bird have you chosen to follow in your final years of solitude? Go ahead, jump holy, all the way to the stomp grounds. We were there when jazz was invented. Shining persons arrive here, Hayakalani. Open your being, Hayakajadi. In every small thought of what to fix, in every immense thought of dancers winding through the Milky Way. Hayakilasti. What obscures falls away. Hayaki, Haki. Yeah, 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 hey, yeah, 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 oh, 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 Hayaki. In Medellin, Colombia, poets fill stadiums. Poetry is like popular music. In Tohono O'odham, culture, a soul can find its way in and out of a basket. The Shipobo weavers of South America make weavings of songs. They sing their weavings. What does an artist do? An artist listens and responds. I've come to the conclusion that it's all about listening. Everything is about listening. An artist is called to take care of the spirit who moves within, who must create whatever the art. It is a demanding spirit. It likes polished and innovative houses within which to live. It is always hungry for vision. This can be difficult to explain or even to recognize within, especially when artists are dismissed within a culture where arts have lost their significance. The arts are spiritual food. We need to feed our souls even as we feed our bodies. In the public school system where I grew up until I left for Indian boarding school for high school, some attention was given to arts education in Tulsa. It was in the creation of art my spirit gained inspiration to live, much like Jane, beyond the violent struggles of living. In the late 60s, the Institute of American Indian Arts was a Bureau of Indian Affairs boarding school for the arts. We were mostly high school students from all over the U.S., from Alaska to Florida. There was a 2-year postgraduate program. Even at that young age, we were aware that we were carrying something that belonged to our parents, their parents, and theirs. All the way back to the creator of existence in this world, who probably sang us into existence or talked poetry into existence. We talked and listened in a backdrop of Frank Zappa, the Four Tops, Jimi Hendrix, and Taos Round Dance songs, and spoke of the knowledge that whatever we created would always have at its root our tribal aesthetics, find shape from the shape of our creation stories. We inherently knew that what we created didn't belong to us, but came from the energy of the age with which we entered this earthly realm. It was a tough world for Native people. We looked for vision in our art, for our art, to feed our art. Some of us would get lost for a while some would never be found. All of us actually, who have been kept going through our darkest hours, attribute an image, a song, or words as handholds for our souls to pull up and stand. This is Woman Hanging from the 13th Floor Window. From the 13th floor, her hands are pressed against the tenement building. She hangs from the 13th floor with a swirl of birds. They could be a halo or a storm of glass waiting to crush us. And we hear her crying, set me free, set me free, set me free, set me free. And the woman hanging from the 13th floor is not alone. She is a woman of the brand new baby. She is her mother's daughter and her father's son. She is all the women of the apartment building who stand watching her, and we hear them crying, set us free, set us free, set us free, set us free. She sees a lake of sadness lapping at the shores. She shoulders neon and all the tender stars. The city gleams at night with promise. She sees other women hanging counting their lives in the palms of their hands, and their children are singing. Set them free, set them free, set them free, set them free. When she was young, she ate wild rice on scraped down plates in warm wood rooms. It was in the farther north, and she was the baby then. They rocked her, and her mother would sing, bye, oh baby, 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 when you coming back home, baby, I've missed you so long, baby. And the woman hanging from the 13th floor hears other voices. Some of them scream out from below for her to jump. They would push her over. Others cry softly from the sidewalks, pull their children up like flowers and gather them into their arms. They would help her like themselves. She thinks of her father, she thinks of her mother, she thinks of the brand new baby, she thinks of all the men, she thinks of the color of her skin, she thinks of all the women she has been. She thinks of waterfalls and pines. The sun falls west over the gray plain of the city. Her heart breaks open. She climbs back up to claim herself again. Set me free, set me free, set me free. I am not afraid, I am not afraid, I will overcome. Bye, oh baby, 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 bye, oh baby, baby, baby. I am not afraid. I have John Coltrane, I have Leslie Silko, I have Toni Morrison, I have Tupac Shakur. An artist is, in essence, an assistant of fresh cultural becoming. We often work in the dark, and most often alone and within the interior of what has not been realized or given birth to in the consciousness. We don't often know what we're doing. Standing behind my father in the car as we drove through the oil fields of Tulsa and the surrounding area, hearing jazz for the first time became the song thread that emerged several years later when I picked up a horn to learn jazz when I was 40 and am now working on restoring my tribe's presence in the origin story of blues and jazz. In this contemporary multi-corporate U.S. overculture, the buying and selling false culture is what I call the overculture, artists are viewed as strange step-relatives, somehow necessary to culture, but what is culture anyway? And what use are artists and the artist in a text-digital internet fast lane of a world that appears to prefer arts on YouTube rather than in the breathing present right here, right now? During my tenure on the National Council on the Arts, we were in the midst of a culture war that has escalated to the absurdly ridiculous in recent years between conservatives and liberals. There was a turn to funding what was safe, which made a larger focus on education and arts and education and less on support of artists. Note that the creation of the NEA drew support across party lines. Senator Hubert Humphrey declared during 1963 hearings and on the formation of the NEA, quote, "The arts have a significant place in our lives, and I can think of no better time to place some primary emphasis on it rather than in this day and age when most people live in constant fear of the weapons of destruction, which cloud man's mind and his spirit and really pose an atmosphere of hopelessness for millions and millions of people." End of quote. He went on to consider what would happen if there was as much funding for arts and the preservation of what has, quote, "made mankind and the civilization we are in," end of quote, as for war. Art carries the living soul of a people, of a time, a place, of a generation. It is through arts that we know ourselves as spiritual beings. As a high school student at Indian School, I became aware of patrons of art. Under Lloyd Keevanew's direction, patrons of art funded the shift of Santa Fe Indian School to an arts-focused Institute of American Indian Arts. The Rockefeller Foundation contributed. Connections were many-layered and included Santa Fe artists and art institutions to organizations and persons from organizations like the Fashion Institute of Technology. Vincent Price funded the Creative Writing Prize. Jonathan Winters, the comedian who just passed, and I think he was part of G-Boy, funded our theater program. And then the then Secretary of Interior, Stuart Udall, gave our commencement speech. I, like many artists, have been helped by many along the way, by individual supporters of art, like writer visionary Meridel Lesueur, who she would send me money, and it always came when I didn't know how I was going to buy groceries, with being an artist with 2 children. And it would just show up, and a check would just show up in the mail or cash. Leslie Silko, who gave me a typewriter, and by NEA grants for writing, a U.S. Artist Award, state arts councils, private foundation monies like the Guggenheim. Artists depend on this assistance, and we tend to give back in turn. That's how it works in this call and response of artists, lovers of art, spirits of art, ancestors of art, and descendants of arts. We need spiritual artistic food as much as we need food for our bodies. Artists serve their art, which in turn serves the collective hungry soul. My Aunt Lois Harjo Ball, a Creek woman, an artist and supporter of arts, inspired me. She worked in our tribal cultural institutions, the Creek Council House. Native Arts and Cultures, the first organization of its kind, has made funding individual artists a priority. My aunt, along with others of her generation, dreamed this organization, and we all appeared in our lives to serve arts and to serve it. The art of many of my generation started with the involvement in indigenous rights movements and awareness. My poetry emerged from a need to witness. In the 80s, when I visited Central America as an artist witness, mothers had lost their children to torturers, and war clung to me and said, to torturers and war. They clung to me and said, take these stories and songs and poems back to your people. Many of the poems in Mad Love and War carry these songs and stories. Artists are natural social activists. It is the artist who reveal the state of the soul. Where have we been? Who are we becoming? We, artists, patrons of arts, funders of cultures, caretakers of cultural expression, exist within an extraordinary field of meaning. We were given this part to carry forward to the next generation of expression. It is through the efforts of many in this room and at this conference that art and artists, that culture and artistic expressions are rejuvenated. Mado, as we say in Muskogee, or thank you. And by the way, if you follow the Trail of Tears back alongside the Arkansas River, down the Mississippi, one strand leads back to Congo Square. It was a Muskogee ceremonial ground. Most people don't know that. We were there in the origin story of American music. So we're going to close with Witchy Taito and some riffing off of that. And I want to say, Mado, thank you, all of you, for the hard work you do. And I know there's a lot of long nights and getting grants, and there's just so much involved that people have no idea. And I didn't even know the extent of it until I got involved with NACF and, well, the NEA also, and so on. So thank you, Mado, and thank you, Tomer, and all the organizers and the people, the sound people always, and the people who cook the food, and thank you too to this earth on which we stand. There's a lot of history here. This is a crossroads of a lot of people, a lot of the origins of music, right through here in this place. And we want to recognize those people and those ancestors because they're still here taking care of this place. And so this is Witchy Taito in honor of Jim Pepper, who he did the original song with songs from his Kaw grandfather. Witchy Taito is basically a peyote chant. And I've just done my own version. We're just going to improv on it today, and we'll go out with that. So thank you, Lulani, for your intro. And of course, Larry Mitchell, who is joining me here. We get to play now and then these days. Witchy Taito, give me raw, ho-ro-nico, hey nay, no way. Witchy Taito, give me raw, ho-ro-nico, hey nay, no way. Sing it with me. Witchy Taito, give me raw, ho-ro-nico, hey nay, no way. Witchy Taito, give me raw, ho-ro-nico, hey nay, no way. I can't blame anyone for a trail of lost sunrises, sunsets, and the theft of sleep under the turning red moon of justice. I lay my tired body down in yet another hotel room. Once Louis Armstrong and his band stayed here, later the hotel fell to trash. I dreamed for the king of jazz. When I woke up from a 40-year sleep, it was by a song. I could hear the drums in the village. I felt the sweat of longing in each palm. The singers were singing the world into place, even as it continued to fall apart. They were making songs to turn hatred into love. Wichita, give me raw, ho-ro nickel, hey nay, no way. Going back home to claim my soul, take it back from the sugar man, take it back from the money man, take it back from the money man. Wichita, give me raw, ho-ro nickel, hey nay, no way. Wichita, give me raw, ho-ro nickel, hey nay, no way. Only one of many worlds. Worlds are beings, each with their own themes, rules, and ways of doing. Humans in this world fall easily into war and are quick to take ownership. We come here to learn peace and how to let go anything else, said the crow, wrestling over another piece of roadkill as vehicles whiz by to nowhere. This is the Kitchen Table University, right here. We are here to study, to take care of each other. First lesson in all studies, from sociology to mathematics to literature to the origins of music, is the blues. Wichita, give me raw, ho-ro nickel, hey nay, no way. Wichita, returned to my ancestral grounds. There stood my relatives welcoming me home. We danced all summer. We visited all the other grounds, sharing food, songs, and a night that made circle to sunrise. Gogaji Janagi, Yaye Chadlis. Gogaji Janagi, Yaye Chadlis. Gogaji Janagi, Yaye Chadlis. Gogagas, Gogagas, Gogagas.